Hi everyone, I think we just have YouTube on right now. Facebook should kick in about a minute, though we could be live right now as well, not quite sure. I think I might have 2 videos looming on Facebook, so if somebody could just give me a mic check or a status check on both YouTube and Facebook. Okay, YouTube is good, thank you Carlos. What about Facebook, guys? How's Facebook looking? I think actually we have, okay, Facebook is good, audio is good, cool, okay. Alright guys, so I'm gonna jump into it. It's 5:05 here, so started a bit late today, just didn't get the schedule in time. As you can see, I'm a little dressed up today. Had a few television interviews here, local TV here in Estonia. So I dressed up for you guys today. I also haven't shaved in a bit. I told the Estonian FSA that I wouldn't shave until they classified a project that I'm consulting on as not a security. So we're getting there. Not quite there yet, so maybe next week. I might look like Santa Claus. I don't know at this point. I'm going to follow the normal, let's say the normal schedule we do on this little AMA. So I'm going to jump into what is... Hey Merrick, nice to see you here. So I'm going to jump right into our first news topics. So we go through news topics first, and then I jump into Reddit questions, give a quick update, and then we'll do some AMA questions from both sides. And by the way, if you don't know, my name's Kevin, and I'm the CEO here at CoinMetro. So let's jump right into the mix here. Give me a second so I can bring up my screen. I was going to share the articles with you guys this week, because last week we had a freezing episode, but I didn't have time to set that up, so we're going to do that for next week, hopefully. So I have 11 different news articles, some of them actually pretty interesting this week, others not so much, so we'll try to breeze through the ones that aren't so interesting and talk a little bit more about the ones that are. Number 1 on the list, crypto exchange Poloniex removes margin and lending products for U.S. users. So this is obviously in response to the FBI and the CFTC shutting down one broker. I've been saying for quite some time that the CFTC would take ownership of crypto trading in the United States, meaning that they would classify crypto as a future. Now, I was actually on Telegram corrected by one individual. I didn't because I had only read a portion of the SEC statement. I didn't read the whole thing. I read a little bit more, though, after someone made a point to say that one broker was actually allowing swaps to be paid on other securities in Bitcoin. And that's actually correct. However, the CFTC taking ownership of that with the tie-in of cryptocurrency still gives a bit of precedent. We also have precedent from another case, a fraud case in the U.S. around crypto trading, where the CFTC took precedent as well over the SEC. So, or with the SEC actually, but at least on certain aspects of the case, they took it over. So Poloniex is obviously doing this in response to that because they do not want to run aground at the CFTC without having the license, and they don't have a futures license in the U.S. So what this tells me is that what I've been saying now for months is actually kicking off. I didn't think we'd see the real brunt of this until 2019, which still may or may not be the case, but we're already seeing now in the U.S. A push towards crypto being classified as a future. So we'll see what happens before the end of the year. I don't know if we're going to see real regulatory moves before the end of the year in the U.S., but we'll definitely see it in 2019 if we don't. So smart move by Poloniex. To be honest, crypto trading in general, I think, is going to get classified, but they de-risked a bit by pulling out those products, so good for them. Number 2 on the list, Ethereum. The ICOs have already sold almost as much as they raised, says BitMEX Research. I don't think you need to do too much research to understand that. We're now basically 2 to 3 weeks we've been stuck between, let's say, $200 and $240 for Ethereum, after falling, from the highs at 1,400, sitting around 700 for quite some time, and then tanking again. So, when you look at that, you obviously see that one, nobody's buying because there's very little buy pressure because it isn't going any higher. But you're also seeing a lessening up on the sell side. So I still think we could probably see lower lows, though, to be honest. But yeah, I would think we had at least initially when the ICO boom happened, because Ethereum was just rising and rising and rising because of the demand and because people were buying it to invest in ICOs, and ICOs were holding it because it was increasing in value. You then had a peak, a topping out, and when it started to fall, ICOs didn't hold it as much. And so even though people were buying it to invest in ICOs, the ICOs were selling it. Then you really had the major, let's say I think we had 3 major waves of selling where people stopped buying it, I believe, and those that had it were perhaps investing it in ICOs, and the ICOs were selling. So yeah, I would say that's probably correct. I don't think you need to do much research really to figure that one out. And now newer ICOs obviously are looking for alternatives, and if they are getting Ethereum, they're selling it right away, which has a neutral effect on the market. Number 3, Stellar-based zero-fee decentralized crypto exchange StellarX fully launched. So this is actually a nice project, or business actually. It's a nice business. So Stellar, at least it's very U.S.-centric right now because they have U.S. banking in place and they're allowing U.S. deposits, ACH deposits. So something like SEPA in the EU. I would say fast transfers, but actually ACH transfers aren't that fast, but they're generally very cheap in the U.S. So an ACH automated clearinghouse for those that don't know. I like Stellar. I think this platform, the decentralization, as long as Stellar is KYCing, I actually don't know if they are, but I would assume they are if they have banking in the US. I haven't read that deep. I read a lot about Stellar when it first came out. I can't say that I've read too much in the last couple months, 6, 7, 8 months, because, well, I've been busy. I guess if you ask some of the guys on Telegram, we've been busy, I don't know, doing nothing. But yeah, definitely been busy, so I haven't read up as much. But what I would say is that I like the project. I've always liked it. The decentralized aspect, as long as there's KYC and AML happening on the on and off ramps of, let's say, fiat-based currencies in and out of that program, in and out of that system, good to go. I like it. I think we're obviously a different business model. Our business model is much more holistic, and we touch on many different aspects. I mean, I think the Stellar aspect is trying to create something where they think their assumption is that blockchain-based assets are going to take over traditional assets. And I generally think that blockchain-based assets will simply become another tool in the tool belt for traditional asset classes. So we'll see who ends up being correct. What I can say is that, at least on our side, we'll remain flexible enough with the way we structure our business that if we have to go the Stellar route at some point, we'll be able to do that. And we are looking at different options on how we can integrate decentralized aspects into our own exchange, atomic swaps, etc., that were discussed in the white paper, and also different methodologies. So I think we're going more holistic, but I like Stellar. I think it's great. And the adoption of the actual token itself or the coin itself probably isn't as robust as they initially thought it would be. We'll see if it they did base it on their own token, so they do carry a large amount of risk there that they didn't base it on something outside of their own ecosystem, at least for initially. But my hat's off to them. I hope they succeed. Number 4, cryptocurrency exchange have a bot problem. Yeah, I would say trading in general has a bot problem. Bots in general, not just in cryptocurrency, but I can think of one instance in FX actually where a company by the name of Knight Capital, I'm going to say this was 2014, maybe 13, 14. Knight Capital had a bot that was running both currency trading and equities trading. Knight Capital owned at the time a very large liquidity provider, institutional liquidity provider in the U.S. called Hotspot. And Hotspot was using bots that were brought in by Knight Capital, and they basically, I think they lost something like $400 million in the span of about 30-40 minutes on equities trading and FX trade. I think it was FX trading as well. It was definitely mostly equities because of a bot issue. Somebody put the wrong bot on, and it was just selling basically into demand and got killed before anybody noticed it. And then when they shut it down, they almost went out of business, and they had to actually sell themselves. But they did so it was a rather large and liquid company, so they didn't have that much trouble finding a buyer, but it was a fire sale, and they almost went out of business. So, bots can be a big problem. Most people don't create bots to make a nicer market, let's say. They create bots to try to to try to find holes in the market where they can make money. So crypto is definitely, from just the fact that it's an immature and a new market, has a more of a quote-unquote bot problem. We've talked about wash trading here a lot. That's definitely one aspect, but it's not the only aspect. You also have other types of, let's say, malicious type of trading that can happen. I would say that on the face of it, it is a problem, but it has a lot to do with the immaturity of the market, the lack of price discovery at exchanges, the lack of liquidity in the market. It just makes it too easy. Beside wash trading, obviously, you have things like spoofing, which are very similar to what wash trading is. It's pushing orders in the book, obviously, that don't get filled. It's just pushing in a bunch of buy orders underneath the current price to try to boost the price, or above the current price, depending on which way you're trying to push the market. But it's similar to wash trading. The point is that there is a bot problem, and there's going to be a bot problem until frameworks are created that people need to follow under some regulatory guidelines, unfortunately. So we've obviously been waiting for that to happen. Number 5 on a list of 11, Arlen, this is from XRP Capital fleeing U.S. in reaction to unfriendly SEC. Yeah, look, whatever the SEC, regulators around the world all think generally the same way. The U.S. is a bit different when you talk about securities. For example, U.S. securities law is like, I don't know, walking through like a dark room with dark sunglasses on with your eyes closed shut, trying not to trip over something. And EU security law is a bit, the room at least has some light on, you're like blinded in one eye, but you can kind of, finagle yourself through the obstacles without killing yourself. But in general, they have very similar views. The one major difference, however, is that the US prosecutes, and they do so regardless of where you sit, and they are aggressive. So from that perspective, people tend to get very antsy, and they tend to assume a lot. When they see the SEC do anything, they assume many other things. It's like it becomes like a matrix chart. I mean, it's just the SEC does some small thing, and boom, everybody starts having all these conspiracy theories about what might happen next. So I don't see so much the risk for XRP as far as it being labeled a security. I don't see it having too much of an issue with the current one broker situation. But crypto in general is a risky market on all sides, whether it be regulatory related, volatility related, or what have you. So, but I do think people tend to overreact, and this is probably an overreaction, at least at this point. Number 6, Tether grappling with allegations of Noble Bank insolvency. So, Noble Bank. Noble Bank in Puerto Rico, one of only 2 full-fledged actual banks on the island that are on Puerto Rico, that are from Puerto Rico, local banks. So Noble Bank was set up itself as basically a institutional kind of crypto clearinghouse over the past few years. And there was a story that came out, maybe multiple stories. I saw one that basically said that they were looking for buyers. Now that doesn't necessarily mean you're insolvent. It could be a strategical move. It could simply be that the owners are looking to get out of the business. It could simply be that they're looking to perhaps finance something else. Maybe they found a better business model and they want to get out. It could mean insolvency for sure, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Again, people like to jump to conclusions. I think Tether has its own problems regardless of Noble Bank, to be quite honest. Whether they're super solvent or not, Tether is probably going to use this as an excuse for its own issues. And I know they've had some audits that say everything's fully backed up and blah, 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 blah. But, you can trust some audits as far as you can throw the auditor. So, good luck with that. But I like to see how the story evolves because, to be honest, I don't really know. It's kind of hard to figure out what side the truth lies on, to be quite honest. Number 7, crypto unicorn Coinbase valued at $8 billion as Tiger Global is said to invest $500 million. Yep, we all know Coinbase is a behemoth. They were one of the first on the block. They established themselves quite firmly in the U.S. They started to establish outside of the U.S. They've been able to do this on the back of what is, let's say, on the outside of a rather limited use case, a rather limited set of services. They had a lot of first mover status, especially in the U.S., not globally. China was definitely first mover. Places like Huobi and others that were around before Coinbase. Yeah, 8 billion. I mean, look, at the end of the day, that shouldn't be too surprising. The market itself, the market cap fluctuates between 2 and 300 billion over the last few months. I don't know where it stands exactly right now, 230, 240, something like that. Coinbase owns a good chunk of that, that's for sure. So the 8 billion valuation doesn't surprise me. In fact, people want to invest in them doesn't surprise me. They're obviously doing the right things. They are trying to push regulation like we are in different jurisdictions, sometimes in the same jurisdiction. One day I think we're going to finally cross paths and actually put our heads together. Yeah, I think they're doing the right thing, and that's why they're valued where they are. That's why you're not seeing people want to throw money, legitimate money, at other players that are maybe larger on paper. Because the future is not so bright. Number 8, coming exchange shutdowns, Kraken, BitMEX, Binance, all at risk as CFTC and SEC design regulatory actions. I'm going to take a quick look at this. So I don't think this is based on any real, this is all kind of innuendo right now. Just reading here, well, scanning. Okay, so anyway, a lot of crypto writers putting their voice into this story. They put pictures on this news story that came out on ICO Journal, theicojournal.com, that look rather let's say known faces, and then most of the comments are by crypto-centric folks. So. So if you want to take this literally, the one broker has to do with leverage swaps, which is definitely a future. The U.S. has not yet classified crypto as a future. I do think they will. They haven't yet. I think the Kraken, everybody. Look, I think pretty much every exchange on the planet probably has some U.S. exposure, meaning they have U.S. clients, even if they don't know, especially if they don't do KYC. They have no idea where their exposure is. So it's everyone is at risk, not just these guys. If and when the CFTC classify crypto as a future and require a US-based license and a US presence in order to onboard clients. Now, the one broker thing is a bit different because I think they're probably going to allege at some point here some type of fraud or mismanagement or manipulation. There's going to be some other type of charges. I would say the list that's given there, Kraken, BitMEX, Binance, as far as I know, Binance doesn't offer any leverage products that would be immediately classified as futures. BitMEX definitely does, and I would say yes, BitMEX is probably running around trying to take that $600K they pay a month for rental space and figure out where they can throw that money at a nice legal team. In Kraken, I don't see them offering. Now, Kraken has a bit of a colored history or a flavorful history with regulation. While they're pro-regulation, they've been vocal about certain things in New York State, bit license, etc. So, but I don't see a major immediate risk for them. Though out of that list, BitMEX, immediate risk for sure. They need to duck and cover. But when it comes to Kraken and Binance, immediate risk, no. Risk, however, of course, they need to make sure that they don't have U.S. exposure if they really want to have zero risk. U.S. client exposure is always a risk, and it will become more of a risk in the future without proper regulation. And that includes CoinMetro. Number 9, BankX introduces crypto custody for everyone. So the one thing that caught my eye on this article was it said something along the lines of only 0.2% a month. That's 2.4% a year to hold your crypto, a volatile asset where you may lose 50 or 60% of your money anyway, and then get knocked for a 2.4% fee for being able to store it for you. So still extremely expensive. You don't pay that much for a custodial service for fiat currency, that's for sure, and not even close. So it is rather expensive, but that's because it's new, and that's because obviously they probably have to work out insurance coverage on their side and other things, which cost a lot of money because it deals in crypto, and people don't quite understand how crypto works. So what I would say is, yeah, custody for everyone. BitGo's been doing that for whatever amount of time for everyone. Anybody can get a BitGo account. It's custody. They hold the private keys. The private key gets held with a third-party entity, and you have access to it when needed through a specific procedure if BitGo were to go under or whatever. So nothing new there. Another company offering the same service for roughly the same amount of money. So, I guess it means progress, which I guess is good, but no real big news there. Number 10, crypto bots manipulate proudly. So this article actually talks more about spoofing, which we talked about a little bit earlier, actually. People who create crypto bots are probably proud about them, and they probably, I meet a lot of guys who are, hold on, wait a minute, let me get in the picture, crypto traders, and how they're very professional. And they've seen very big profits, and they know about technical analysis. Anyway, too many quotes there. But and all they arbitrage, and they think they're geniuses because they figured out a way to make money between two exchanges that have shit price discovered. In reality, those aren't traders. Banks invented arbitrage, and when banks get into the business and when liquidity comes in, arbitrage vanishes. There are many different types of arbitrage: latency arbitrage, triangular arbitrage, price arbitrage, blah, 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 blah. But a trader doesn't game the market, they beat the market. There's a very big difference between that. When you game the market, any broker can actually cut you off and take back your profits by their terms and conditions. When you actually beat the market, that's a different story. So, these guys that create these bots, are proud about them, and that's great. But again, as regulation starts to come in, a lot of these things that plague the market right now plague the market because they can. And I say regulators a lot, but it's not the regulator's job to create the laws, right? They're just there to basically enforce them and to put them into action. But the legislators need to start moving. We need to start seeing, this isn't rocket science. We have existing laws for all this stuff on the books. Maybe we need a few amendments here or there to fine-tune them, but we don't need to reinvent the wheel here. Number 11, Ameritrade trading giant Virtue invest in U.S. cryptocurrency exchange. It was going to happen, and it will continue to happen. I think 2019, aside from being the year of regulation, will be the year of mergers and acquisitions. Into 2020, where we'll probably see our first central bank-backed test of a I don't think it'll be called a cryptocurrency, bad connotation, maybe a blockchain-based digital asset or some nonsense like that. But yeah, I think the roadmap is set. You're going to see some early guys get in early, people that can be exposed to a little bit of risk. Ameritrade didn't really go through the same kind of browbeating in the last 2008 crisis, let's say, than your bigger banks did, so they can kind of jump in, get their feet wet, and if they get smacked on the wrist later, it's not going to be a huge thing for them. A bank like a Wells Fargo or a JP Morgan or a Credit Suisse, where that got a little more browbeaten during the last financial crisis, need to do this a little more quietly. But they all want in. They all want in, and they all eventually will get in. That's for sure. Okay, guys, jumping into Reddit questions. Let me see how many we have this week. 10 guys, 10 people this week. Might be a few more than 10 questions. We're about halfway through here. I'm willing to stay a bit longer if we have some additional questions on the AMA, so just hang out for a bit, guys. I'm going to jump through these questions real quick from Reddit first, and then we'll jump into the AMA session on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, author number one, we have Biordo94. Will you have a system in place for extremely rapid scaling your support staff? Apparently Kraken now has 500 plus support staff. I can imagine it's quite difficult to find, hire, and train such a huge amount. It's something we've been dealing with and looking at even before we go live. It's not easy. There are, you have options. You have options where you have some type of third-party system or support in the background that you can kind of click a button and bring on support staff. Those won't be highly trained support staff. So you'll have a window of time where you're giving kind of mediocre support until you can get those people trained. But you're right in to say that it's one of the most, I've said this a lot of times, but once this business is up and running, it becomes a support and marketing business. The tech becomes almost secondary. to the fact that you need to support your clients and get new clients. That's the name of the game. So you're right. It's not easy, and yes, there are plans, but there's no, you can look at any company that has scaled. While you're scaling initially, you are going to have growing pains, no matter how you set it up. Even if we were to take a bunch more money and get 600 people waiting in the wings, the problem is you don't know how to train those people. You don't exactly know the type of questions, the percentages of questions about login, about how can I fund my account, about where's my wire transfer, about how do I open a limit ICO order on the trade. You don't necessarily know. So if you spend the time creating FAQs and creating automation on that side based on a certain type of question, and those questions don't come, then you just wasted a bunch of time. So initially, yeah, there's going to be some pains. We've obviously started to already build up a support staff and train them on generics and basics. Use a bit of our experience from FXPig in order to train on specific topics, and create a training manual so that we can get people trained as quick as possible. But it always is going to be a challenge. It's one of the biggest challenges, and there's, unfortunately, yet there hasn't been some blockchain solution for scaling up customer support. There's a lot of AI and there's a lot of machine learning floating around. Some of it works, a lot of it doesn't, and even those that work are very narrowly focused still. So it's not a perfect solution. This is water, by the way, just so anybody has a funny thought in their head. Matt's a boss. Hi, Kevin. After meeting with regulators and hearing the views, how, in your view, do you think regulators might come down on Bitcoin? With Bitcoin posing a threat to the traditional monetary system, do you think they might try to hurt Bitcoin adoption via regulation? What's their general attitude? No, I don't think they see Bitcoin as a threat at all, and I don't think they should. I don't think the Bitcoin blockchain in its current iteration has any real threat to the traditional monetary system. At some point, traditional monetary system will be some type of blockchain-based protocol. It won't be Bitcoin's blockchain, that's for sure. They're not going to rely on a bunch of 13-year-olds in their basements and in sheds in the backyard mining to process their transactions. So I don't think they see Bitcoin as a threat in that sense at all. I think they're starting to understand the virtues of blockchain. That's why you hear a lot of people say, I like blockchain, but I don't know about this crypto thing, which obviously is an ignorant statement because they don't understand really what they're saying. However, it's true to a certain extent, and I think they understand that blockchain will become a tool in their tool set or their toolbox. So generally, the attitude right now around Bitcoin, which is kind of, some regulators, when you say Bitcoin, just that's all crypto, right? So, but their attitudes around Bitcoin is they still have some misconceptions about it being fully anonymous, about it being a tool for money laundering, about there's no real use case yet, about how. So there's still some misconceptions, but I think they're almost all in agreement that blockchain at some point will become the traditional monetary system. And in 10, 20, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200 years, whatever it is, 20 years, when a new system comes out, they will have the same argument again. And then you'll see what the new traditional monetary system looks like, etc. So you have a few questions about XCM. Will XCM be burnt at the time of transaction or will it be burnt later? We're actually building models right now. So the initial idea was to have it burnt at time of transaction. However, now when we look at the formulas that we need to create in order to see the burn rate, it seems that it may be better to burn on a monthly basis, where we basically hold all XCM earned throughout the month, and at the end of the month, we burn a percentage based on partially the volumes that came in throughout that month. So right now I can't answer that question, but it will be answered shortly. Will the daily burn rate be shown somewhere? Yes, whether it's daily, monthly, how much we burn, that will be on our transparency page. Will you be selling XCM immediately as you receive it, or you accumulate it? More than likely accumulate. If we buy it and sell it immediately, we neutralize the effect of the burn. And we neutralize the effect of the demand, not the burn, but we neutralize the effect of the demand created by having to actually convert into XCM. Is there a formula by which you calculate how much XCM to burn? Yes, there is, and yes, it will be something that's released publicly. Right now, we're working on several different models. It was We had a meeting today at 2 p.m. With liquidity and banking manager, CFO, and myself discussing just this topic. Bruce Lee, 707. Hi, Kevin. What do you think about the current state of the ICO market and the way it will evolve? Do you think ICO Express is still relevant? I think the ICO market, look, there's always historically been a gap, a funding gap, a cap, let's say, or it's a gap actually, between, let's say, 1 to 2 million. I'll give the EU just for a very specific example, but it's worldwide. Let's say 1 to 2 million onwards up to 8 million. And actually in the EU, it's 2.5 million to 8 million. Under 2.5 million, when you raise capital, you can do so for the most part under exemptions. From 2.5 up to 8, you can do so with limited approvals, but you still need approvals. And then above 8, the door opens up now to licensed securities, but it opens up to many more pathways to raise funds. But that 2.5 to 8 million has always been a difficult fundraising because on one side, crowdfunding can get you 1, 2 million usually, generally. Can't really get you much more. And if you want to go the sophisticated route, you can't really ask for less than, let's say, 8, 10, 12, 15, because there's just not a lot of interest there. So finding, there's always been this gap. I think the ICO model, with some refinement, is a perfect fit for that gap, to fill that gap, that funding gap that exists between, let's say, 2.5 and 8 million, or roughly 1 to 10 million, let's say. I do think that there needs to be frameworks, there needs to be rule sets, there needs to be a clear reason why a company would do an IPO versus an ICO. 1 second here, I'm just gonna make sure everybody, okay. I have to make sure everybody was still hearing me because I haven't looked at the chat. So I've been talking here for an hour and nobody was paying attention or nobody could hear me. So I think that there needs to be a very well-defined difference between IPO and ICO. There needs to be specific reasons and use cases for a company to use an ICO. You don't necessarily want a company that's going to raise $1 billion using an ICO, and you don't necessarily want a company that wants to raise 10 million to do an IPO. Actually, you really can't. So there has to be a specific breakdown, and there needs to be more rule sets. And at the end of the day, every regulator we've talked to pretty much agrees they're all securities. Now, the guidelines that have been created in Estonia, in Switzerland, etc., describe different types of tokens: security token, payment token, whatever token, utility token, award token, or whatever. Point is those are types of tokens, but tokens, when they do an ICO, are a security by most definitions under the law, in the EU, in the US, etc. So I do think that structure needs to come. They need to be classified as securities. They're all security tokens. When they go through an ICO, there needs to be something like, look, there's secondary markets in the EU. Here in Estonia, we have the NASDAQ, which is a primary market, and then First North, owned by NASDAQ, which is a secondary market. It has a lower entry bar, let's say, to get a security listed, but you still need to go through a process, and there needs to be a process. Once that process is done, then there's a few other tweaks that need to be done, but I think the future is quite bright. But it's not going to be anything to what you've seen up till now. You can't, unfortunately in this day and age, you can't just allow people to raise money by putting a website online, because it's very easy then to create fictitious projects and sometimes even fictitious investors to launder money, to move funds between two parties, then terrorist funding, all this good stuff. And while regulators use those terms to scare and there is some fact behind it. There is some fact behind the fact that when it's too easy, that's what happens. Bad actors come in and do bad things. So is the ICO Express still relevant? Sure it is. The ICO Express initially was conceived as an automated tool for creating smart contracts. I don't think anything has changed at that point. That's still going to be something that is needed, and I think people will use. I do think it needs to be blockchain agnostic to the extent that it can be, meaning that it should be usable on multiple blockchains. But there's many other aspects about that ICO Express. It can be consultancy, it can be helping with tokenization. It can be help with building economic models around tokenization. It can be liquidity, underwriting. There's so many things that ICO Express can be and will be in the future, and I think it will change over time depending on the needs of the market. It's all about flexibility when it comes to that specific product. You mentioned that fees will be converted to XCM. If all fees are converted to XCM, how are you paying your expenses? At some point, XCM will convert it back. You're right, but not all fees are actually XCM. There are auxiliary fees, like for instance, when someone makes a credit card deposit, when someone uses their debit card, when someone pays a monthly fee on a premium debit card. These are things that are handled, let's say, some of them outside of the platform, so we are paid either with fiat currency. And they can be quite large additional revenue. And there's also revenue that will come in from SEPA transfers, et cetera, that are billed outside of the platform, thus not billed in XCM. So not all revenue is XCM based. All exchange revenue is XCM based. And yes, at some point it would need to be converted. However, if we're converting into demand, it's different than if we're converting into supply. So again, we talked about this today. It's basically, the idea is to basically only cash in. The ideal scenario is we cash in on a year at the end of a year. Over the next year, we're cashing in on a monthly basis a certain amount of XCM. So the first year we don't do anything, we cash in nothing, and as the years progress, we start cashing in on a monthly basis, and maybe quarterly at some point. But we do so in a fashion where we look at the liquidity that's available to not overly affect the market. At some point, however, inside the model, we can clearly see, for instance, if we're doing 2 billion a month, 5 billion a month, 10 billion a month, 20 billion a month, 50 billion a month, 100 billion a month in volumes, even if we only wait 2 to 3 weeks to start cashing in some of that XCM, the push that this does because of the circulating supply and the amount of fees we would need to be able to have in let's say euro value in order to cover that volume would induce price increases. And even us selling it back, depending on how those price increases are handled by the market, would not induce the same amount of, let's say, retreat. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's a rather complex modeling, but it's obviously something that we're looking at. And once we do have a specific model, while all pieces of that model won't be made public because some of it's going to be proprietary, the burn rate, what we have, what we're selling back, all that stuff will be made public. Number 4, a CoinMetro fan. Hi, Kevin. Is there any possibility that regulators would take a dim view of some of the planned ideas to increase value of XCM? For example, might they argue that token burning serves no purpose other than to reduce the supply and increase the price, and therefore manipulation? Well, no, actually, because at least for burning, we own what we're burning. It's the same thing if I go to the stock exchange and I buy 1 million stocks, whatever, 1 million shares in a stock, and then I destroy them or burn them. They're mine. I can do whatever I want with them. Whether I want to give them to somebody, whether I want to destroy them, whether I want to bury them in my backyard until they rot, it's my prerogative. This isn't spoofing. It's not fake orders to just induce price increases. We're actually, literally buying this XCM. We own it. So no, I don't think so, to be honest. Generally speaking, this doesn't happen. It happens, but it doesn't happen as much. It's not as relevant or prevalent as it is in the crypto world, because when shares actually have the shares have a more tangible cost to them, because when a company goes public, there's underwriting, there's deals with banks, there's usually debt involved, sometimes debt involved, etc. So there's a little more tangible cost. When a company makes a token, they click a button and make a token. So that's why these burns have become so popular, because I do think, though, and you're right, that regulation will probably bring some rules around this. And I can't say if I agree with those rules until I see them, but it definitely is something that regulators, I'm sure, will put their thinking cap on, and probably at some point we'll be asked what we think about those, at least here in Estonia, and we'll have to make a judgment. Number 5, Forest GGG. Hi, Kevin. What fiat currencies CoinMetro is going to support? Will it be possible to draw them back to my bank account? Maybe some Skrill or PayPal. So thanks. Open beta is great. Well, thanks for the open beta comment. Appreciate it. Fiat currencies from day one. We have actual brick and mortar bank relationships for Euro in the SEPA zone. We also have options for euro outside of the SEPA zone, as well as multiple other currencies. Pretty much all the major currencies, so your 5 majors. USD is usually an issue, to be honest, because when you're outside of the US dollar market and you're not regulated in the US, US dollar accounts for crypto, forex, etc. can be quite hard to find. We are working on multiple options. We do have one right now. We had 2. The other one, unfortunately, lost their correspondent banking for USD recently. I know we will have more. Day 1, I can guarantee you euro in the SEPA zone, and then we're going to roll out those other options because they're higher cost. We need to also see how we deal with those costs, whether those costs go back to clients, and I mean the funding costs, for example, or if we are somehow able to mitigate that cost on our side. PayPal, absolutely not. I can't stand PayPal, and to be honest, when it comes to a financial business, we cannot deal with possible chargebacks, and PayPal and chargebacks is just horrendous. So Skrill, more than likely, yes, there will be an option for Skrill. Chip 2018, would it be possible to bring the family airdrop back? 0.1 Ether, and you get a certain percentage of airdrops. The family airdrop will come back, but not in that manner. We will have tiers of people that hold XCM that will have access to the family airdrop, and then the amount of XCM they hold above that tier will determine the ratio of the airdrops that they receive. There's one exchange out there who use similar marketing strategy now as 150,000 people. Yeah, I mean, it does bring in people. Sometimes the caliber of people it brings in is a bit questionable. And yeah, I want to make CoinMetro viral, and I know we will. But I think at least right now, bringing in 150,000 people that just want to get access to airdrops. To do airdrops, we need to bring on tokens. And right now, our vetting process is not easy. And I think most tokens won't be able to pass it. We also need to look at if our banking partners accept these tokens, not only our banking partners, but the regulators as well. So at least initially, it's going to be a process that's going to take some time. We didn't envision that it was going to take as long per token initially because initially we didn't have, let's say, the banks telling us that they also needed to vet these tokens. From a regulator standpoint, we always knew the regulator might want to step in. But now, every day that goes by, that's becoming more and more relevant. So airdrops, unfortunately, won't be something there won't be so many out of the gate, so to speak. So it's a good idea. We will tie family airdrop though back in at some point with tiers of people that are holding XCM. So thanks for the question. Number 7, diligent techie. Hi Kevin, just a couple from me. I was wondering, how is everything going with recruitment? What positions are you searching for right now? Recruitment is something that's always ongoing, and every now and again we have something to smile about. We're still looking for front end, back end developers. We're also looking for UI UX designers. And your basic design team here in Estonia, in Tallinn. I think compliance is something else that we're looking for, different pieces of our compliance team here in Estonia. We're also probably looking, I know we have a list on the website which is up to date, so you can have a look there as well. Customer support as well, for sure. So yeah, but obviously from the dev team, we're building out that dev team. So that's definitely something we're definitely looking at. But our first priority or our first choice would be to have those guys in Estonia. So we're trying to centralize things in Estonia for the most. But I don't know if that's going to be possible, but we'll see. Is your office getting a bit cramped now, or there's still room? Still room to grow. I think we have 19 people here now. We could probably fit 30, though I think 25, 26. Comfortably, 27 maybe comfortably. So I would say, yeah, there's more people, that's for sure, but still room to grow for sure. And when we need to grow out of this office, we will just get more office space. I think we'll keep this office because I think it's become part of our brand image, but there's more office space around, so we'll pick up some more when needed. What do you think will happen to exchanges like Binance when the regulation hammer falls? Well, what happens in every industry, they either can conform, which is going to be difficult. I think Binance kind of sees the writing on the wall. That's why they're going and kind of linking up with partners. I think they did so in Luxembourg, Uganda, Uganda might have been them only, I don't remember. Where else did they go? Was it somewhere in the Caribbean? I don't remember. I think Singapore is their next spot where they're trying to do fiat, but they're linking up with partners, and they're doing that because if the main Binance were to fall over, they have something to fall back on. So either you're going to see a lot of towers fall, or you're going to see a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So companies that have the ability to be able to make things compliant come in, swoop in, and take over. And I think that's probably some of the options you might see happen, not just to Binance, so to speak, but to many different entities that currently exist right now. And some may just fall to the wayside and die. I'm not saying that's the case, but in any regulated industry that goes from being unregulated to regulated, that's think about, it's a funny thing to compare, but think about the marijuana industry, for example. In states, in the U.S., for example, where it was illegal, there was drug dealers, obviously. Now it's legal. What happened to all those drug dealers? They didn't become legal because they couldn't get licensed. It's pretty hard for a street-level drug dealer to obtain a government-sanctioned license. So what happens? Well, their business topples. Doesn't matter how big they were. They're no longer drug dealers, probably. So, this is, when you're in an unregulated space, you don't follow regulated rules. And when those rules come in, it's almost impossible to conform to those new rule sets. Number 8 from Johnny Dixon. Hi, Kevin. Has CM overspent the 10% for regulatory? No. Compared to what was raised, not even close. Compared to what we have, let's say the average that we've had in the bank over the course, still no. Why not dip into the 20% war chest to fund the extra licenses? You got, again, that 20% is what we have in the bank right now. What we have access to right now versus what we're going to spend on regulation is far exceeds 10 to 20%. But if we took, from the beginning, when you talk about whatever 12 million euro, it wasn't. But that 12 million euro isn't 12 million euro anymore. It's, when we talk about regulation as a whole, if we want to move into the US CFTC, 25 million net capital plus. That's one license. If we do look at some point perhaps acquiring a banking license or some type of fund license as well to handle some different pieces of our ecosystem once we've expanded, you're talking about another 5, 10, 15, 20 million depending on the license plus. So regulation can be far more expensive than what we've. I'm not saying that's in the roadmap just yet. But just to give you an example, so the original white paper was to get the exchange up and running Q3 and running, and then licensing along the way in Q and Q4 with no exchange, no more money needed for licensing, and more money needed. The money isn't essentially needed for licensing. Licensing is a piece. If we were to raise if we had 100 million thrown at us right now, a lot would be used for licensing. If we had 5 million thrown at us right now, we wouldn't use all that much for licensing. It would be used for other things. So it's not exactly for licensing. And yes, the white paper, which was obviously written mostly partially by myself and then expanded, was written in August of last year, over a year ago. And we basically looked at the map, understanding how long it would take for development, etc., adding in here or there pieces of time. And, well, it wasn't 100% accurate, obviously. To get the exchange up and running initially, we thought we'd be able to do so with specific business rules and specific setups. But as the regulations change, and as we see as we've seen proposals from the finance minister here on how it will change, some of those business rule sets have had to change. Changing the business rule sets sometimes it definitely causes delays in development. We also had the fact that we were designing different GUIs, and then when we tested those GUIs on small groups, it just didn't work well. So we went back kind of to the drawing board and figured we'd test on Telegram because we had a community there. We might as well use them. So there's been things that have caused delays. But the money that we would be looking to raise is not anywhere specifically for licensing. It's for operations. Part of that is for licensing. So there is some licensing we're looking to acquire here in Estonia, which will require about €1 million to acquire, more or less. 730,000 minimum capital, about 60 to 70,000. So let's say 800 all in for, let's say, the fees that are for legal fees. And then it will probably require maybe slightly bit more staffing. And if you pull that staffing out over a year, you're probably talking about another 100K. So maybe 900,000 is what it's going to cost. So yeah, some of it may go to licensing, but that's not the bulk. 4, if you did another token sale, which by the looks of the mod reply on the sub, it's already been heavily discussed, pricing plans in place, would you not be once again breaking this key statement? In the event that CoinMetro reaches its goal without selling all available coin, unsold coin permanently limited will not be circulated. Sold. Depends on how you look at it, I guess. From our standpoint, until the token is minted and distributed, the token sale, or the sale period, has not ended. So the question would be this. I think breaking, when you look at the terms and conditions, that is the legal agreement. White paper is not. And there's different ways you can look at this. It says, yes, it says unsold coin, correct? But it does say token sale. It doesn't give a definition of the time of that token sale. We defined in the white paper, or in the terms of sale actually, only 2 types of sales, which was pre and main, or we did flash sales. And nobody really complained about how the flash sales weren't listed in the document, but they didn't have to be, because the word sale, sale ends once distribution happens. Once we mint, we can only mint what we sold. And then after that, obviously no sales can take place. It's impossible. So, you come to the point where, look, if we need money for operations, and to be honest, token sale is not my first option to raise additional funds. I think there's better options at this point. But if we need funds for operation for reasons, crypto crash, not being able to liquidate crypto because we didn't have access to banking, getting the banking too late, crypto crashed again, having crypto only, now having to exchange crypto at a much lower price, meaning that we have less money on the books, meaning that we only have money for, let's say, XX months, and we may need at some point a capital injection depending on the initial revenue that's generated by the exchange, then we're going to need capital. So the question is, what makes more sense? Does it make more sense to look for that capital and keep chugging on? Or does it make more sense to say, no, you know what, we did say somewhere in the white paper that and we aren't going to do any other sales outside of the main sale, so let's just give up, throw in the towel, and let's let the token go to 0. I don't think that's really an option. So we don't do this because we just, like raising money. In fact, I don't really like raising money. It's not something I wake up every day and go, yay, I can go raise some money. I'd rather just dig into operations. But, if we need money to keep on going, then we're going to have to raise that money. And we went from 8 to 10 somehow. So 10, last question on this today, guys, then we'll jump on the AMA. On Facebook and YouTube, I have Tarasoft 1992. Is CM planning to add Google 2FA anytime? It's actually added. So the QR code that you get for Authy, you can scan that with Google Authenticator and it will work. We may at some point decide, more than likely, to add an authentication right into our own app. Because Authy, I think, does have is a bit better, especially on lost devices, than Google. But a lot of people like Google, but I don't generally think Google is the best option either. So we may just incorporate it in our own app. We may just go to Google at some point here to not have to worry about Authy and people complaining about it. But they're both capable of receiving that QR code, so you can use Google as you want. All right, guys, going to jump into the AMA here. Okay, so I see on Facebook, when TAM, and then will TAM be available within 2018? No, it will not. TAM is going to happen Q1, I think it's Q1 next year, possibly into Q2. Q1 more than likely, so right after we launch by the end of 2018, these 3 services that we currently have, the 3 platforms live, we will start to do margin trading. That's the first one, because that's the biggest revenue generator for us on the exchange side. Once we've completed that, which is really just an auxiliary component onto the exchange, then the TAM and the ETCF are next. So Q1 next year. Okay, whoops. Let me scroll here. On YouTube from Declan. Polo has a long way to go to be back. All right, hold on. I have to, I'm going to try to pull this up on a bigger screen here because I'm having my old eyes. Actually, I have like 20/20 vision because I had LASIK surgery, but that aside, I can't, it's hard to scroll. So give me a second here, guys. I'm going to pull up YouTube so I can see all those older comments, because it looks like there's quite a few, so I can go through them rather than trying to scroll them here and as you see me squint at the screen. All right, so let's go back to the top here. Okay, so Declan came in with a question, a comment or a question. Polo has a long, it says YouTube, Polo had a long way to go to be back to decent exchange. Removing margin removes the last chunk of their users. Yeah, you're probably right, Declan, but risk mitigation, they're now owned by Circle. They got a lot of cash. I think they'd rather reformat, restructure. They probably could sit on the thing and wait for 2 years if they had to, rather than risk censure by the CFTC. So I still think it's probably a good move for them. Had it been us, limited capital, let's say, it's a different story, but for them, probably a good move. Matt on YouTube as well, you only have to do KYC and Stellar if you deposit fiat. Yeah, that's going to probably change, guys. I don't see any regulation that statewide regulation is one thing in the U.S. Once the CFTC takes hold, that's not gonna fly. Declan saying spoofing's hard to prove. Yeah, spoofing is much harder to prove than wash trading because they're basically canceled orders. So it's a little more difficult to prove than filled orders that are filled with zero spread. It's quite obvious. You don't even really need to see orders to see that. You can look at APIs. You can look at just volumes and find out when there's wash trading going on. Spoofing is much harder to prove. I agree. Read the one broker indictment. The problem is basically they were selling CFD securities unregistered. CFD did say this week virtual currencies are commodities. Okay, well, there you go. So what's the BitMEX risk? Yeah, they don't take U.S. clients, but I don't believe they do KYC either, do they? And even if they do KYC, they probably, companies that don't take U.S. Customers or say they don't, and maybe they truly try not to, can still have U.S. exposure. You can, because it's just residence, remember, it's residence. And to be a resident of the U.S., at least under the tax law, you only need to be there 28 days out of the year. So you can literally have a UK national that goes to the US for 4 months, hangs out, opens an account under a US IP address using his UK address, and he trades, let's say, a commodity outside of the US, you're screwed. So I think they definitely have US exposure. So whether they try to stop it or not, mitigate it or not, that's where the problem lies. And yes, selling CFD securities unregistered. Yeah, they were selling leveraged CFD securities. So you say securities, but an FX broker, let's say, can sell a CFD on a security or an equity, and and not be licensed in the U.S. So anyway, I think BitMEX does. Out of all those, at least right now, I think in the coming months, everybody that has any type of U.S. exposure that trades in crypto will be on the hook, probably more than likely. But BitMEX definitely has more to lose at this point. And their business model of leverage synthetics, even if they're deliverables, but leverage deliverables with swap interest, with interest tied to them. And if the fact that, and I didn't see that the CTFC this week said virtual currencies are commodities. I didn't actually catch that one. That's amazing. Thank you to the Fed, Declan. But there you go. CFTC now has oversight. If the CFTC has oversight and they're considered a commodity or a future, that means you're required to be licensed in the U.S. in order to give these products to U.S. To trade. That means a CFTC license for Coinbase, the Kraken, all of them. So that's big news. Declan, not smart to burn tokens. Burn useless tokens. Sure, if you don't want tokens are going to be valuable in the future, you'd want to hold on to them, tokens, or do buybacks. You say Bitcoin is a bunch of so yeah. Well, we do buybacks. The burn rate is tied to every single transaction. And it's going to lower over time. So it will be more initially. As volumes grow, the percentage will lessen. At some point, the burn rate will have to come to an end, because if volumes keep progressing, we cannot continue to burn tokens, or we will essentially, at some point, the price will hit a ceiling where it will not be able to push any higher. At some point, the market mechanics kind of cease to function. Matt, you say Bitcoin is a bunch of kids mining Bitcoin in their shed, but isn't that what decentralization is all about? Yeah. Look, I love decentralization. I love the concept, but decentralization doesn't work with large financial institutions, unfortunately. when you talk about finance in general, centralization is one of the key points on how our economies work. That's what central banks are. That's why they have buttons to print or, not print money, quantitative easing, all this shit. I don't like those policies, but that's what we've been doing for a long time. And to move into a completely decentralized model is not going to happen in 9 years, 10 years, 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, or in the next 6 months. It's not going to make any difference. So what I'm saying is that who's going to push the innovation when you talk about payment networks or moving money on a blockchain? Who's going to push that innovation? Guys that want to see decentralization and get away from banks, or the banks themselves? The banks themselves. They have the money, they have the insight, and they know what they want. And what they don't, they're not going to use a system that requires some type of mining or some type of high energy usage. It doesn't make any sense. They're going to lose money. Why would they even do that? They're going to create a new system. That's all I was saying with that comment. Declan, when token mint? So the token will be minted before the end of the year. Let's put it that way. So it's going to happen right before the platforms go live for trading. The plan to do that is that I want it to be minted and distributed the day that the token's available for trading. Declan, when does lockup period begin? What is bonus schedule for early investors? Will tokens be allowed to be withdrawn? Okay, when does lockup period begin? Lockup period, as far as terms and condition goes, is from the date of distribution. There's been some talk, and I've made some comments that might be adjusted. It might not. That really depends on our tokenization, on the model that we have for circulating supply and the price, what it does to price. So right now, I would say it's going to stay the same, though it may change. What is the bonus schedule for early investors? You have 25% off. That's every single person that invested in, contributed in any one of these token sales, whether it be a flash sale, pre-sale, whatever, 25% off. So you're paying 0.075% on all your exchanges rather than 0.1. Will tokens be allowed to be withdrawn? Yes, they will. JJ, also YouTube. Hi Kay, given all the talk about US, do you think CM is still on the right track for allowing US citizens into CM's ICO? Well, we actually never intended to allow. They just came in, and then we had to decide what we did with them, and we're still in the process. The problem is every time we get close to getting a PPM and getting things change, and this BitMEX thing obviously puts a wrinkle in the works. So we never expected to accept US. That was always the thing, but they came in, and so we had to deal with what we had. When public API? API will happen after things are live, probably within 15 to 30 days after things are live. A fix will be released. We could release a REST API. I don't really see the reason, to be honest. Fix is a standardized protocol used by all financial institutions, but we will have API access right after, about up to 1 month after the fully live launch. Any news regarding support of the DTC protocol? Give me 1 second. DTC. Maybe I don't know if it's just a long day for me, but I'm actually going to look up DTC here because I'm going to cheat a little bit. Okay, data communication. Okay, no update. Actually, we had a discussion about this with my CTO a while back, but no update yet. Problem is that Fix is still more widely used. Whether it's better or worse, it's still more widely used. And when you're talking about trying to bring liquidity and getting connections, you want to use what's more widely used. That doesn't mean that we won't use other technologies, but at least at first we're not Apple. We can't force people to use a plug that you can't buy anywhere, only from us. Jet Fuel 12, any idea how much XCM you'll need to hold to gain more discounts? Yeah, we're setting that up as well. We're looking from a 5 to a 20% tier. And it's based on a euro value instead of an XCM value, somewhere, I think it starts around 2,000 euro all the way up to 50,000 euro or something around those lines. So it depends, and we're still dealing. all that has to do with this model to try to figure out at what point XCM needs to rise in value, total circulating supply versus the liquidity, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all that's being worked on. That was part of the meeting as well today. Yes, and yes, holding in XCM will be incentivized. Can someone ask Kevin, this is from Facebook, from Carlos. Can someone ask Kevin, actually from Robin on Telegram, I guess, through Carlos. Can someone ask Kevin about TV interview that was featured on Instagram? Yeah, 2 TV interviews today. So we had a billboard campaign here in Estonia that launched about 3 weeks ago. And it was a campaign that we did, not, let's say, a hidden campaign. The campaign was done in the colors of 3 different political parties. And we basically, I think, let's say one of the ads, let's say the Democratic Party came out and the title was something like, e-residency worked, now we need to become a crypto hub. And then there was a social democratic message, please put my pension on the blockchain or in crypto, etc. And we did that for 3 weeks. It drummed up a lot of interest here. People thought they were actual political ads. There was a lot of news back and forth in the news outlets about who was doing this. And actually, the Green Party, who we said, let's make e-residencies was a great thing. Let's do a crypto hub. There was a radio show on Sunday here, a political radio show that happens every week. I guess a long-running political radio show here in Estonia, where they talked about this. They thought it was real, and then the Green Party actually came out, I think, the very same day to say that they were changing their stance and that they were pro. We basically changed their outlook or change their platform with a billboard ad. Let's say not yesterday I did a news conference here with 5 or 6 journalists, and today we had 2 local TV stations come in, TV Talon and TV3, that both interviewed me and asked me questions about why we were here, what we were doing, why we wanted to get involved in Estonia, why we were getting involved in the government, why we did the billboard ads, etc. So that's where that came from. Okay, guys, any other, thanks Declan, by the way, for the great questions and the insight on the CFTC. I did miss that one. I don't know how, but it's been a busy week, so maybe that's how. But yeah, let's see. We have any other questions somebody wants to throw out before I call it a Friday and head out to my next meeting, which I'm already late for. I'll blame you guys for it, so it's fine. I see Natalia, I guess, on YouTube. Would you like to promote CoinMetro on Web Summit? Not sure what Web Summit is, but maybe you can email us and send a pitch, and we'll have a look. And yeah, perhaps, I don't know. It all depends on the platform. It all depends on how the pitch can be created, etc. Okay, yeah, there's a possibility. Look, I'm if there's some speaking slots, you guys need somebody to talk about regulation in the crypto space, compliance in general, etc., etc., etc. I'm game if it fits my schedule. But yeah, please send us the information, and we'll have a look. Alexander on Facebook saying it's not his fault. Well, I can't, I got to blame somebody, right? So it's not my fault. You guys kept me here late with all these great questions, so it's your fault. Brooks Bailey, will there be an option to withdraw CAD from CoinMetro right away? It won't happen right away. Well, credit card, yes. So you'll be able to fund with your credit card with CAD. It's one of the currencies that's currently being offered by our acquirer, which means you'd be able to withdraw back to that card in Canadian dollars. However, for fiat currency, no. We do have an on-ramp for CAD, but it's through a third-party payment institution. So the fees are a bit higher, and we're trying to negotiate those fees lower because, well, we don't want our clients to be paying such exorbitant fees, and there's no way for us to absorb them charging 0.1%, 0.075% on exchanges. So there's a possibility it'll be open, though it may be slightly more expensive than, let's say, a normal bank transfer. But we're working, Canada is one of the places that we're working on along with Australia. So we're in several different Commonwealth countries where we're looking for options. Circle and Square on YouTube. Any more info about airdrops for XCM holders? So airdrops for XCM in general, no real plans to do that again. Airdrops as far as the family airdrops, so airdrops from other tokens that end up getting listed. Obviously that'll happen once tokens start to get listed, which will, with the process has started, but our banking partner here does need to review every single token we want to list. We've already sent them a few options, though the fact that right now the EFSA here in Estonia is starting to, unfortunately, agree with me that they're all securities. It's a little more onerous than it was before to get approvals. I do expect that to change into 2019. Elections are coming, and I do think that there will be a change there. I'm almost certain of it. So at least at first, it's going to be a rather slower process than we envisioned. However, we are looking at other banking partners as well, so that we can use for specific deposits related to trading of tokens. Okay. I see. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Facebook, YouTube. Nobody commented on my jacket. I just feel a little slighted, to be honest. It's purple. I mean, I don't know if you can tell by looking at the camera, but this is a purple jacket on a purple T-shirt. This is groundbreaking stuff, guys. Thanks, Pedro. Appreciate it. I think Pedro's going to get some free XCM. He might have to email me. JK, you missed mine. Let me see. I answered your question, JK, which was about XCM on the right track for allowing U.S. citizens. I said, we actually didn't allow. There were actually messages on the site that we didn't allow, also in the terms and conditions. But we did end up seeing some U.S. exposure. So that's why we've been going through the process of dealing with that. Jet fuel, how much XCM for the jacket? Oh boy. I was digging in the pocket this morning, and I actually found the tag. So I don't know, actually. I don't know. It's not really for sale yet. Once when I get like super famous or whatever, we'll raffle it off for a good cause or something, and then somebody can get this jacket. Declan, have a beer for me, and thanks for the questions again, buddy. Appreciate it. Gerardo, can you elaborate? Can you elaborate on your comment yesterday about 15 euro cent XCM according to volume on the exchange, 6 billion a month? Sure. So the modeling is still ongoing, but basically we're looking at what happens when a certain amount of volume goes through the exchange on a monthly basis. That requires, at 0.05%, we're assuming we're paying a maker on every one of these transactions, which isn't accurate, but just to give a better assumption on or a conservative estimate, that means that there's a certain amount of, let's say, euro value that's going to happen that we're going to need to cover every transaction that happens with that specific volume. So at 1 billion, 5 billion, 6 billion, 10 billion, 20 billion. There's a certain amount of money that needs to be paid to us for those fees, which means we take a look at the circulating supply, what's available. We make an estimate of how much of that circulating supply is actually liquid. And of that liquid supply, at the current per XCM value, what it equals, and is it enough to pay the fees on that particular volume. So right now, very rough estimate is about at 6 billion a month, 15 cents is no longer enough to cover the fees that are generated, which means the token price would need to rise in order to cover those fees. So it's basic supply and demand, though it has a lot of complexities because you need to estimate things, you need to speculate on certain pieces of that model because they're all unknowns. Well, they're not all unknowns, but most of those pieces are unknowns. Circle and Square, are you looking to introducing GBP using faster payment? Yes, we are, 100%. Our current banking partner has a branch in the UK that will go live in May of next year, and they will offer us GBP fast payments, or faster payments. I think before that, though, we may get access as well. So yeah, 100%. We're looking to create localized regional onboarding throughout the EU, and then globally as well, starting with specific regions of the world, which is Australia, Latin America through Mexico, UK obviously, and if Brexit happens, outside of the EU, and then inside the EU where needed. Brooks Bailey asked, any new memes going on the wall? Well, no new memes yet this week. Still have this the lovely bear guy from the week before, and I don't know what this is, like Kevin all powerful, omnipotent or something. The Pizza Kevin though, he's probably going to go up this weekend. I like the Pizza Kevin. Fun fact, I never delivered pizzas. I had a lot of jobs, never delivered pizzas, but I did work at McDonald's when I was 15. I became store manager by 16, and I actually used to work like 45, 50 hours a week. I actually went to Hamburger University for a weekend class at one point. And in Illinois, there's an actual university called Hamburg University, and I still remember the yield ratio of shake mix to chocolate syrup. So there you go, fun fact for Friday here. So please, somebody make a Kevin and McDonald's meme if you would. Make sure you throw some like pimples and stuff, because working around all that grease, let me tell you, it's not really good for your skin. Nice one. So Harold on YouTube asking, when will see him offer IBAN accounts and can be used as a payment provider like PayPal? I hate PayPal, but on IBAN accounts. So that's in the works. We're working right now, and we're in negotiations right now with a banking provider in Germany to be able to provide IBAN accounts linked to all those nice little debit cards, and offer payment remittances, payment services, etc. It's all, you have to think that we haven't changed our business model, but now we're starting to bring, when we go to visit banks and regulators, we don't go in and say, we're a crypto company. I kind of walk in and hide the shirt first, and we walk in and say, we're a traditional financial product that also understands crypto, and then I let them see the logo. So you got to think something like Revolut, TransferWise, then hook that into Robinhood for multi-asset trading, and Coinbase, let's say, for ease of access to crypto, just for an example. And so yes, all that's on the plans. It's actually something we've put a lot of focus behind in the last couple months. When was the last time you had McDonald's? Well, I've been a vegan for almost 4.5 years now. So 5 years ago, maybe, something like that. I can't even eat the French fries because they actually have milk in them. What kind of horseshit is that? Brooks Bailey, you and CZ both, yeah, I heard about CZ working at McDonald's. But I'll tell you what, though, for first jobs or whatever, first, second jobs, some people obviously maybe not their first job, but for a first job, McDonald's makes you learn a life lesson really fast, and that simple life lesson is, I don't want to work at McDonald's. So it's like your first serious job, you get a paycheck, they overwork you like crazy. It is a crazy environment. I can't explain to you what it's like when you're at 1 a.m. on a McDonald's on a highway, and you get 3 or 4 or 5 coach buses from some gambling bingo conference, and 937 old people walk in at 1 a.m. and there's 4 people on shift. Yeah, good luck with that. I went through that a bunch of times. So yeah, it quickly told me that I don't want to work at McDonald's, and this isn't for me. But yeah, it was my first kind of real world job experience. Before that, it was all, I worked at restaurants, did dishwashing, I raked leaves, cut grass, I did whatever I could. But McDonald's was the first real thing. I can remember celebrating with my best friend at the time in the basement of my mother's house, because we both got jobs on the same day, and we literally role played working at McDonald's in the basement of my mother's house. Unfortunately, there's no video of this because it would be quite embarrassing, I think. Anyway. So, okay, guys. Anything else? Anything else before I call it a day here? We're coming up on 6:30. Now I'm really late for the other meeting, so now I'm definitely going to have to blame somebody. I forget who mentioned it. I think somebody mentioned not blaming them, so that's specifically who I'm going to have to blame, I think. Okay, guys, we'll call it a day. Thanks again for the great questions, guys from Reddit, the news stories, everything. I think this is one of the better weeks we've had for the AMA, I got to be honest. Lots of good questions all around, lots of interesting news stories to talk about. Didn't get too much into an update for CoinMetro. Obviously, we got an update email that went out earlier. and I think most people probably saw that. The open beta has now included the trade environment, so everybody can log into that open beta and see now the third iteration, which is the trade. Please have a look. Guys, take that survey if you can, please. That only helps us make things better. And while obviously that helps us as a company, it's going to help you as a client and an XCM holder to make sure you see the most value out of your contribution. So please take the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it takes out of your life, and fill out that survey. Please, I'm begging you. I'm on my hands and knees. Do it. And yeah, have a good weekend, guys. Try to take some time off. Don't look at the Ethereum price, please. Everybody, though, when you go to bed, say a little prayer that it goes up to 700 on Monday. And I'll see you guys next week. I'll try to jump in to Telegram as I usually try to do over the weekend. Hopefully my friend Pi is in Telegram. I don't know if he watches these AMAs, but if you're there, Pi, little wink to you there. Anyway, guys, see you. Appreciate it. See you guys next week. And have a good weekend. That awkward moment before I turn things off. Anyway, see you guys.